Let me introduce our next speaker, Dr. Daniel Sullivan. Is a retired general manager of the Space Communication Division of TRW and the former vice president of systems engineering at Hughes Communications. He provided technical leadership for new business activities for telecommunications segments. His work included the preparation of business plans and synthesis of advanced systems. Currently, Dr. Sullivan is managing an entrepreneurial firm defining the future satellite communication services. And his talk is named CSI denotes communication satellite innovations. So, so let's welcome Dr. Sullivan.
With my cell phone. Hear me okay? Am I on the air? Okay, yeah, well, I realize that this may not be the best week to stand up in front of my USC buddies as a Notre Dame grad. But that's behind us. By the way, one thing about that, the football game Saturday night, and that's time slot of 5 p.m. here and 8 p.m. on the East Coast, was the highest rating in that slot ever. So somebody's doing something right. Anyway, yeah, I fit into this in a number of different ways here. I've known a number of the guys here for a long time. In some sense, I was a brokering between, at the time it was TRW and also at Hughes, and USC. And we did a compilation once. We were trying to get some money out of TRW for USC or something. We did a compilation of the TRW guys that had come from USC and had some attachment, most of them through fellowship programs, but not strictly that. Anyway, that was at TRW. And at the time, we had 10 vice presidents that had come through here that were vice presidents. So my overall message here, I'll try to get to here. That's kind of this is me. This is my this is my summary. We talk about the little bit of background, so a little bit of history, some of the technologies, some products, a little bit about the business, and a little bit about the future. Now, this is my overall message. Somebody's got to run the companies. So even though the emphasis on research and that set of things here, and it is with me too, but what was done here is, over the years, is put people into the industry here, and I'm telling you, they're running the companies. You know these guys. So we met some of them here. So that's kind of one of my overall messages. Somebody's got to run the companies. Now, okay. So anyway, first off, what we're talking about here is really the leading technology in communications, which there's a bunch of backdrop of how that all came about. Particularly, folklore. Folklore says that after World War II, Howard Hughes said, at the time he was building airplanes, like the Flying Boat, it was one of those, or the Spruce Goose, but he was dabbling in airplanes because he never had a production plane. He said, the future is electronics, not airplanes. We're going to do electronics. Okay, and he even said at that time, that's documented in books and things like that, that people from this company, again, this would have been in the 40s, will someday help land a man on the moon. Howard Hughes said that. Now, that wasn't in the movie on Howard Hughes, to say, but okay, oops, what did I do here? Help me. What have I got here? That's the wrong button. Okay, anyway, and then from that was put together the fellowship programs and things like that that were here with USC. And that is folklore too, although that Cy Ramo brokered that with USC and set up the curriculum and that for the people who are coming out here, because he was just hiring electronics engineers from all over the place, Bell Laboratories, General Electric, these places, bringing them in here. And they were to go get the business, which they did do, which was electronics for airplanes. That was what they did. And became, also built the missiles. So the electronics was built, they were really radar sets for interceptors were built in El Segundo. There were also missiles for that. They were built in Tucson. But anyway, that was the business. Now, from that, the response was made by the Hughes aircraft executives to the need for the government to have somebody to manage the ballistic missile programs and the satellite programs which were coming along. This really was before Sputnik, but they were still working on these things. Anyway, and that formed, from that was formed Ramo Woolridge Corporation by Cy Ramo and Woolridge. Anyway, and from that was spawned, and the role of that was System Engineering Technical Direction. I think we still call it that. Anyway, from that was spawned Aerospace Corporation to continue that role, and then Space Technology Labs was formed to build that to pursue the hardware. It was just and there were some other companies in there too. There was a Bunker Ramo company that was in the computer business, came out of that divestiture or whatever you call it. Anyway, and so then, so that was kind of the second thing that came along. But at this time, there's all these things going on here at USC, which many of us became part of, including me. So anyway, came out of that. For Southern California came an industry, which was the leadership of the satellite business. And it was different in different kinds. Hughes, in the 60s, formulated their business around product lines of particular satellites they saw over and over again, and they did it very well. And at TRW, it was more program by program, big jobs, big programs for the government. And I guess I have to parenthetic remark that a lot of the outstanding technical contributions made by these companies we will never know about. Just leave it at that. So, okay, so I pretty much covered that. And then again, the satellite role at Space Technology Labs, TRW, again, came through this System Engineering Technical Direction role. Very system-strong company. But Hughes on its own then went and said, we're going to the satellite business. And again, the way that I said, they did it differently, tried to do a product line, which Hughes did on other things. But that was the other major thing, because Hughes was actually the one who led the commercial satellite business. Okay, some technologies. Now this is let me give it. I looked at these things recently, these technologies for satellites. I've always been a satellite guy. What impressed me was the advances of technology that have taken place in the last 10 years, 10 or 15 years, even though, oh yeah, we're still doing antennas and microwave. All of these, the technologies of these, in these areas are much advanced from where they were 20 years ago. And some of those things are like microwave components, for God's sakes. I mean, we now have microwave CMOS and those kind of things, which means that fundamentally low power, fundamentally you can do more. Always been, satellite business always been led by antennas. Whatever you're going to try to do, you're going to have to do. I'm going to show some of that. There's actually one on the next chart here. So the antennas have already led it, even though antennas as a discipline isn't particularly pushed by universities these days. It's hard to do, and for a number of reasons. But it has led, will lead, and always will. And the antenna guys in the companies are the crown jewels, these companies. But okay, anyway, then the other one I want to bring up is the fiber optics translated into laser components, translated into laser communication systems, which has been pushed by the fiber optic guys. And here, we have had outstanding contributions here. those guys have pushed that fiber optic stuff. So it can go in satellites, which introduces a whole nother level of what you can actually do and what we've always called laser conference satellites, which has been going on for a long time, will be going on for a long time. I have a little bit more on that later. Okay, now I wanted to show this. This is the satellite. It's called, the name of it is SkyTerra-1. It's for light squared. You may have heard there's a lot of litigation, well, a lot of arguments about how you can use the spectrum in terms of on the ground versus satellites. But this satellite is L-band, and they've been using that L-band spectrum in orbit for a long time, and they have that. Now they're trying to use it on the ground, and there's interference with GPS issues, which are, but okay, never mind. The point about it is that this satellite was designed so that you could have a satellite which would pick up traffic from your cell phone in your pocket and provide, well, voice plus stuff. Depends on, if it's really from that handset, it's going to be in that range of voice plus data, sort of that range. If you put a different terminal on it, you put it on an automobile, then you can do quite a bit more than that. But anyway, and so that was done. Now, 4 things were done here. One of them is that antenna is 22-meter diameter. Roughly speaking, the size of this room, I guess, or something like that, or half this room anyway, 72 feet, something like that. So, and it's I think this particular one, how they deploy differently. There's different kinds of them. Some of them are double fold umbrellas. Some of them are, I guess they call them trellis fence. I always call it deploys like a snow fence. You know, anyway, but those, anyway, they deploy differently, but different ways of getting the same product, which are these very large antennas. Okay, and that's one thing. Okay, the second thing that is done is the cell phone that we use, the cell phones, because of the cost of the cell phones and that thing, are all linearly polarized. Because a linear polarized antenna is $5, and if you had to go circular polarized, it's difficult. That can't meet the cost points if you do that. Anyways, what they do in these satellites, this satellite is in orbit. They combine the 2 polarizations to form a linear polarization that, let's call it, tracks the polarization of the handset. Now that's done by sending all of those, the feed array is 100 or 200, well, about 100 feeds. What they do to do that, they send down the microwave or the inputs from all 100 feeds, and they form the beam on the ground and 2 polarization, and it turns out they combine from 2 satellites. So that's 4 bites at the apple that are here to get to where you can have reasonable capability from a cell phone. So anyway, those are the 3 things: big antenna, ground-based beamforming, polarization combining, and multi-satellite combining. And it literally, but link closes to a standard handset, the one in my pocket. Okay. Now there's been all kinds of business problems about that. I don't want to get into that. But that satellite's in orbit and has that kind of capability. And I consider that's just a remarkable achievement. And it actually was started and pushed by certain guys from Ericsson. That's who really pushed it. And it's taken a long time anyway. Geostationary? Geostationary. That's right. It's TerraStar-1 for light squared. That's right. And that link will close to a handset with voice or that equivalent, say 10 kilobits or some that kind of number. Now again, I want to show let me show another chart. This is now one of the ways I got involved in all this was while I was working at Hughes Communications, which was the service part of Hughes. Anyway, we were part of General Motors. And General Motors wanted to expand their OnStar service and satellites in a lot of ways. It's been quite a while ago, actually. And they've done a lot with OnStar. So anyway, so we started looking at that. Now, if you want to do this with automobiles, you can begin, on the automobiles, you've got antennas. Typically, the antenna for this is almost already there because they have XM radio antennas on them, and those aren't very different from what you need here. And then you can integrate the antennas. They've done all. General Motors good. They've done all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but it's not that much of a stretch, I'm saying. It's a local area network of all the cars. Now, you realize they're linking the cars anyway for a number of reasons, like charging. Well, they're charging on the Harbor Freeway when I came by there today. Anyway, but they want to charge. They want to connect all the cars for collision avoidance and a lot of things you can do. And those that really end up being wireless local area networks, they're actually Wi-Fi in a sense. It's 802.11p. 802.11p is, and it has the same protocols as these other the more advanced versions. Anyway, but being able to do that is a big deal in terms of these cars all being connected. And if you don't have hotspots, which you will have, but you can't put hotspots all over the country. And where you don't have hotspots, you use satellite. Hotspots come in, you go to use it that way. But somewhere along the line, if you don't have hotspots, you got to get out of the car, and you can get out of there to a satellite, and it'll run various numbers, but I think it'll run 300 kilobits or something like that. It's enough to run the computer, and in a minimal way in terms of it being the hotspot. Okay, let me move on here. Okay, now the satellite business, I'll talk a little bit about. I want to talk about DirecTV, so I'll make sure I have some time for that. But there are really 4 kinds, and they're really very different. 4 kinds of satellites. The one fixed satellite is what Intelsat does. That's where all the transponders are leased and all that, and all the television programming is sent around using those. But the business is fixed satellite service, and that the terminals are fixed, and generally pretty big. No reason they can't be. They can be, and that's how. By the way, that's how the cable companies get their content to the cable company, I mean to their affiliates. It's by anyway, FSS. By the way, it's a really good business. Really good business. The huge part of that was Galaxy, and that was sold off. Now it belongs to Intelsat along with Pan Amsat. A lot of dynamics of the business have taken place. But okay, anyway, that's a certain kind of a satellite. Okay, and it is a very, very lucrative business. Okay, now mobile satellite is one I just showed. Now more of that is Inmarsat is in that, and other companies. There's a number of companies. That's always been a struggle. A lot of people remember Iridium, and it's always been a struggle in terms of building the business case for that, in terms of paying for the satellite. But the ones I showed were GEOs. That's one satellite, and you'd like the second one as well over that same coverage area for main region. You can't do a business on one satellite. Maybe people don't remember the day the pagers went down, because the satellite went down, took down the paging system, the whole U.S. That was a serious matter. But okay, anyway, so you can't really run a business on, and so there are 2 of them. That's my point. But it's not 66 or 30 or 12 or something like that. Okay, I want to make a comment there. There's a system that was called ICO, intermediate circular or whatever. Anyway, which again was started on. They built the satellites, and those satellites. I think there's 12 of them built. Some of them are not finished, but there's 12 of them in some level. I think half of them are finished. They're in storage. They've been that way for a long time because that business plan never came together. And anyway, those satellites are still there. People are still jockeying about what to do with them. But okay, anyway. Now broadcast. I'll talk about DirecTV a little bit more. But broadcast, this is a DirecTV satellite. You want to get into a small dish. An 18-inch dish was always a DirecTV model. That meant it was okay for the program they're doing. Now I realize a lot of that has changed because they're now using the satellites for HD TV and for local programming, which is more spot beams and things like that, which but the actual first DirecTV was launched in 1994. So that's a pretty good business. And I want to show about it here. Just a second, one other thing. One other was also what I called internet access satellites. HughesNet is that. You see that advertised all the time. And Viasat has that. Okay. Anyway, so I want to do this. And then there's commercial and military version. The military version aren't that different when it comes down to it. They have different missions, and so there's hardness and a bunch of stuff. But it's not, what they're trying to do isn't that different. And another thing, in the military capability that's been out there in the last few years, like in Afghanistan, 85% of that capacity that's used by the military was carried over commercial satellites. And that doesn't look like it's going to change, even though they are got a lot of capability coming along in the military. Okay, let me move on here. Just about done. Okay, DirecTV. Started by Hughes Communications. And by the way, it was started by engineers from Hughes. That's who started it. Anyway, and it was interesting things about how it came about. But if people look at it, look at the numbers. I looked at it just yesterday. The market cap's $29.5 billion of DirecTV. And there are 20 million subscribers. Now, General Motors, who sold it, is at 39. Now, General Motors was way down at one point, so this chart used to say 29 versus 5 or something like that. You know. But okay, anyway. But you look at it and say, hey, that's a slam dunk. Wait a minute. The things that had to go on to start DirecTV were amazing. And again, it was kind of a right set of guys with the right kind of gumption to get that sold. They had to sell it to General Motors, that's what they did, and they did that. Okay, but the key thing to all of that was, I remember Bill Pratt and Irv Reed image processing. That was here. And those guys were out in front of that stuff a lot, okay, which became the MPEG standards, which became all that. And because I was part of looking at these things a long time ago, and we figured we could do 4 channels. And they're doing hundreds. But okay, anyway, so, but the other one was they were able to get enough power, RF power from the satellite by solar arrays to get the DC power and tubes to get the rest of it. Okay, so my last chart doesn't have Notre Dame in it, by the way. Okay, but anyway, it's not about that. This thing is not about the past, it's about the future. Okay, and I have a chart I'm going to put up here, kind of a notional one in some sense. This is a satellite system, conceptual, that will carry a terabit per second as a backbone in the geosynchronous orbit. And that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know how good my chart is. But anyway, and then the individual areas here, the individual coverage regions for a particular satellite. Okay, and the technologies needed, I mentioned, it's a laser comm backbone across all that. That's what that is. And the others, various frequencies you can use and coverages and a lot of trade-offs. But that in my personal appraisal, that technology is here. Getting it all going and everything, that's a huge battle. Okay. Questions?